What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. Today we're going to go over the Alcaraz, which is Mogul's newest listing. I am a few days late to the party on this one. It came out I think 3 days ago now in the the VIP launch. Just been under the weather. Have been not being able to make myself do a long due diligence video, which I think this property deserves. There is a whole lot to get into. Hopefully I'm up to the task tonight. We shall see. But where to get started? This is one of the more expensive listings on Mogul. They're raising $808,000. I think the purchase price is just under $1.6 million. Even with that purchase price, year one yield projected at 10.1%. Which is below the current run rate as far as revenue goes. With their average yield, I just hate this metric. But levered IRR 14.5%, levered multiple on invested capital 2.5x. Very much the type of deal we've come to expect from them. I do just like to remind you, just because it's what we expect from them, do not take it for granted. They are, I don't know, I've been spending a lot of time this week trying to find a deal of my own here in San Antonio. It's what my team does for, out-of-state investors all day, every day. But looking for one for me, it just really reminds me, because usually I'm not out there doing it, right? It's mostly my team. It really just reminds me how tough it is to find deals like the deals that they're doing, right? You can't just go out and buy any short-term rental and get numbers like this, or any pad split like the pad splits they're doing, and get numbers that look anything like what they're coming up with. I mean, they're doing a fantastic job from a numbers perspective. There are some things that I want to point out. I always come across as way too much of a fan of them. I want to make sure that you are doing your own due diligence on their properties, right, and on the platform itself. There has been a couple people in the Discord lately, and some people are DMing me about what are, from a regulatory perspective, is there a lot of risk with Mogul? I honestly don't know. I looked into it a little bit in the beginning. I have heard a little bit from them. Just based on my general impression of these guys, I don't think that they're doing this. They're not cowboys. They're not the type of people that do things, without seeking legal counsel. And I know they've talked a little bit about it. If that's something you're concerned about, I think, definitely bring it up in the next webinar, or feel free to reach out to them directly, because they're really good about, they're quick to respond to questions. So I'd encourage you to do that. It's definitely not my area of expertise as far as, their, how they get away with not being securities. And so, it's a good question though. And if it's something that you're concerned about, definitely, dig into that. For me, that's been one of the things on a lot of the platforms that I'm not as concerned about, depending on the structure, right? If it's, I just don't personally find a lot of, I don't find the actual securitization to provide a whole lot of protection for me. I don't mind the ones that are tokens. I don't mind all the different ones. I think obviously it's a risk that possibly the company is taking, but it's not necessarily, it certainly would impact us if they got shut down. But short of that, I don't think it's something, I don't believe I'm going to get in trouble for buying something that maybe should have been a security when it was sold to me, right? I'm just not terribly worried about that, but I know some people are. It's definitely something to ask about. Anyway, weird aside. It's probably going to be a lot of those tonight because I'm a little loopy. Just pounded a Mountain Dew, so hopefully I'll get through this. We shall see. So it's a four acres of property. It's just outside of Macon, Georgia. What is the actual address though? It is Lizella. I'm not sure. 4,600 square feet. This is the stuff that came in the email about it, right? I mean, this is all the stuff that's pretty, you can see heated saltwater, infinity pool, spa and hot tub, built-in bar and fire pit. I mean, we're going to look through the pictures a little bit, indoor fitness room. I mean, you are basically buying, this is not buying the single family home and turning it into, I mean, it is a single family home, But this is you're buying very much a hotel, right? A resort property. It just happens to be a single unit. Um, they have jet skis and a pontoon boat that they're renting out that they've had additional income with that they're not even including in their underwriting. I like that a lot because I like to buy real estate, not personal property. Of course, they're getting it with that. They're getting the furniture and everything, and so I believe this is set up to have really great returns. Even above and beyond what they're projecting, as from the revenue perspective. All that being said, at the same time, a lot of people think we're heading towards a recession. I think there's a really good chance of that. I just don't ever like to make predictions about the future. But if we do, obviously that will impact vacation and travel. Will this perform next year like it did last year? Maybe not. Maybe it will be a few years before it's back up and running really well. You just never know. And so that's the real risk with this one. But so I do want to go, just look at a couple of the pictures. I mean, it is just a really fantastic property overall. Right on the lake. It's well designed, well furnished. I didn't, and obviously, one of the things that you can do for due diligence, and I think you should do every single time, is really go slow, look at every single picture. You can actually like open these pictures in their own tab, and then they're not cut off on the sides, and I can't even think of what that word is right now. But so, taking a hard look at the pictures is one way to do a little bit more due diligence on these. But it is, let's see. They are doing 75% loan to value on this, 6.875 interest rate. So very much like their typical deal. Valuation is going to be extremely difficult on this, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. We haven't looked at this market specifically. So this is Lizella, Georgia, little tiny market. Where did I feel like I don't even see the population right now, but it's why don't I see the population? I'm pretty sure I saw it earlier, and I'm just missing it now. But it is a tiny unincorporated community, so I don't necessarily. Anyway, so what I'm looking at then is the metropolitan statistical area that it's in, the MSA. That's Macon's MSA. We did look at this, I think, for one lofty property very recently. I think actually it might have been the most recent lofty property. This metropolitan statistical area is made up of several counties. How many is it? 5 counties, and even all of them combined is less than 250,000 people. Between 2017 and 2022, which is weird dates for them to have, there has been growth. But then like in the 2010, so it shrunk and then grew again. I don't know what's going on there, but it's just a very, this is not the type of place where I would be buying single family homes for long-term rentals or even for pad split. It's not, you don't have the same demand drivers here that you would have other places, but the property that we're buying, that's not what it's for, right? I mean, it is the value of this property, I think, will be very much tied to the income generation. I mean, prior to that, like, although in lake towns, short-term rentals have been around a lot longer than Airbnb. Like, a lot of people think, oh, this is a brand new business model. Well, it's not, right? Like, I grew up in a town long before Airbnb. In a town, the next town over was right on the beach in Maine, and virtually all the homes in that town for the summer rented out by the week. It was just handled by humans on the phone and putting advertisements places, right? It just wasn't all done through an app. So it's really not a new business model. Probably a lake town like this was very similar. I don't know. I don't know this market at all. But so, the place I grew up in Maine, those homes are incredibly expensive, even though they're really only desirable to rent 3 or 4 months out of the year. And so the same thing kind of I'd expect to happen here. It's very much this usual statistics that I look at, I think are not so useful, right? Now, obviously, that's the in and around this lake area, not necessarily Macon in general, right? Like, and so that's why my take on this is for this property is very different than what I had to say about it when I'm looking at that single family rental that was on Lofty, right? There, I'm much more concerned about what the population growth looks like, what the size of the market is, than I am for what we're doing today. I did look up the Zillow home price trends for the zip code. It went up a little bit last year, which is nice. But if you look at this, this $260,000 median price point is absolutely meaningless when we're comparing it to the property that we're buying, right? Like we're buying something that is around 6 times that, right? Maybe so right around 6 times that. That the median, and so it's going to be a different market. I'm trying to, whenever we're doing due diligence on these properties, I always want to look at whatever I can find, because it's tough, right? I mean, this is going to be an asset that you're really just making a bet on the hospitality business and the desirability of this particular property in this area, and it's going to be a destination property, right? People are going to pick that. They might not necessarily even be looking to go to this lake, but they will find this particular property because of its size and amenities. People could choose it over a number of areas that they're looking at. Anyway, before I forget, please like and subscribe. In the description of this video, I have links to all of the sites where I currently invest in fractional real estate online. Please do your own due diligence on any of the sites that are linked, and their terms as far as like the ones that say they give you money. Some of them don't actually give you money, which is just absurd, right? And do your own due diligence on those platforms and on the properties. I'm just sharing what I am investing in. It doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. You want to make sure that it is. Don't just buy stuff because I do, and don't buy it or not buy it because I'm not. Also, there's a link to the Discord I have set up. Feel free to join that. There's a whole bunch of us that talk about fractional real estate investing on a regular basis. So feel free to join that, jump in the conversations. Okay, back to this property. The forecast for this zip code is to, the property values to increase 1.4%. Again, I think this has very little to do with our property because they're talking about median price point, and we are way well above that. But it is nice to see a chart like this, right? This is one of the best charts we've seen in a little while. Usually, for a lot of markets, this is sort of the peak, right? And so seeing that we're above that is at least pretty good. The FEMA National Risk Index map. This is one of the lowest risk indexes that I've seen anywhere. And actually, usually I like to use this. Oh, that's part of why, right? The color was throwing me off because I had the wrong one. But it is still one of the lowest risks. I don't think this is very low. I think it's relatively low. That looks better. I told you, I'm struggling through this right now. So I'm gonna do the best I can. You're gonna have to bear with me. If you see me or hear me make mistakes in this video, please let me know, and I'll put a correction. I'll put a pinned comment. If it's a big enough one, I always am happy to do a new video. That Houston pad split that Mogul did, I said something stupid about the zoning in that video. Somebody mentioned it to me and immediately realized that, I was completely wrong. I put a pinned comment and I mentioned it in the Discord. But obviously this is completely, there's a large chance that I'm making mistakes, right? So you want to pay attention, and please do share with the rest of us when I do that, so we can all be on the same page. And clearly tonight is a little bit more risk of that than most days. Let's see. So, the things that I like to look at on this, right? Like, obviously, because it's not very populated, has a big impact on the expected losses. But so I always like to look at, okay, what are the actual disasters that could happen, and what's the likelihood? And hail, ice storms, those are the highest ones on here. Tornado 87. Okay, that's pretty high. I'm surprised. I guess it's inland enough that hurricane isn't a big thing there. Anyway, if this is something that is of large concern to you, you definitely want to dig into it more. This is just one of the tools I use. And honestly, um, especially for Mogul, because I know that they, at least they strike me as being pretty savvy as far as their use of insurance. I'm much less worried about how they're going to deal with some sort of hazard and loss than some of the other platforms or some of the co-owners on the platforms that have individuals that run things. Um, but so sometimes you'll see me dig into stuff a lot more, or if it's an area that I'm worried about it. But here, this is really all that I looked at. I did check the flood map because we have a lakefront property. Very oftentimes when you have waterfront properties, your home itself will be in the flood zone. It doesn't look like that's the case here, right? So I was pretty happy to see that. It looks like we are outside of the flood zone there. So I was glad about that. Which means there must be quite a drop off, I guess. I don't really know. And again, if it looks like I'm reading this wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure this is the AE. This becomes the shaded X, and this is the X. That's what I think is going on there. A spot crime map. I mean, there's just no crime here. At least no reported crime that spot crime picks up on, right? I mean, they have way over here. But if you like zoom in, I mean, this is really far from where we are. Now, obviously, this is on 4 acres by itself. So it is, somebody would have to like drive there to commit a crime, or there'd have to be one that the guests commit. Obviously it still could happen, but this is, just because of the nature of the property and the area, it is a very, very low crime risk, relative to most of the stuff that we see. Even like a lot of the other, nice Airbnb properties, you still see, you still see a lot of crime nearby if it's like in a city. All right. There were 2 different Airbnb links. Ike actually shared these in the Discord. I'm not sure why they have to. They both have the same host listed. The calendar looks exactly the same when I click on both. One says 15 guests, 16 bedrooms, 10 beds, 6.5 baths. One says 16 guests, 7 bedrooms, 13 beds, 7 baths. So I guess, one of these is obviously the updated one that has more reviews. I don't know why the old one is still there. I find that to be a little bit odd. You don't normally see 2 like that. So I'm not sure. And this has the little Lux thing. Does this one not have it? Oh, I wonder if that's why. I don't know. I don't know what this is. I haven't seen this before. This is obviously one of the nicest Airbnbs I've ever looked at. So maybe that's why we're seeing something a little bit different there. I'm not sure. But so okay, as far as their projections, right? So their year one, they talked about they are projecting under the trailing revenue, which so they're saying year one top line revenue 246,000. Did they actually say what it was before? I don't think that they did, but I think they just say that they're below. Yeah, I don't see an actual number. They just said somewhere that I don't see it. Yeah, 26,000 extra. Wow, yeah, I'm super struggling, but I'm fairly certain that they didn't give the number there. I looked this up on AirDNA. This is just an area that there are virtually no real comps for this property. I mean, there's all these like little, like less, less amazing properties that are just very hard to compare. I don't know why this one shows up as 6 bedrooms. This one shows up as 7 bedrooms and 7 baths. This was picking up the VRBO income, and this one's picking up the Airbnb. But I don't understand why the listing itself says that it's 8 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms. I don't really understand what's happening there. I don't know why neither of them. I mean, I know that Airbnb won't let you, it'll say 6+ bathrooms, but I don't know why it's not saying 8 bedrooms. I also don't know why this is only 15 guests instead of 16. But so one of these, the one that's picking up the VRBO only has 260 days available. It says that's 190,000 is the revenue potential, and this was the actual revenue. I think what's happening here is the days that disappear from this are the ones where it was blocked off because of Airbnb. I don't really know, but so this one shows at least that they actually had 253.8 thousand in annual revenue. I don't think that we can add these two together. Sometimes AirDNA just acts weird, but at least we have one that's showing, okay, this was available 327 days, and in those days actually earned, 253,000. And Airbnb thinks it's going, or AirDNA thinks it should make 286,000. What's really strange is if you mess with the parameters a little bit to make it so the beds and bath and the guests match up more closely to what it actually is, it takes this number down to 210. It's just because it can't find the comp. So this is going to be, you just have to decide, like, okay, do you believe they'll be able to operate it the way that it's been operating in the past? And I think I said 1.6 million. It's 1.585 million is the actual purchase price. But so, okay, they're saying this year it's actually going to do below that. The next year, I think, is that next year? Is that actually matching it? 253. It's actually a tiny bit better. I keep clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry about that. I think that's, perfectly reasonable, especially because, again, this number shows this is only 327 days available. So whether they took some off because of the VRBO income or whatever they're doing, they're still below this projection here. The only comp that is somewhat similar, although it's like, the 6 bed, 6 baths, 15 guests, has much better revenue, but this is saying like experience a private forest. So I think this one, where do we go? I think this one was like way bigger amount of land. Oh no, well, and it's just a much different, it's a much different thing. So, I don't think we're going to get anywhere near this. I just wanted to point it out because it was the only one that was like anything, that had numbers anywhere near what we're talking about here. So anyway, I think, in my opinion, it looks like they're being, that they're shooting low again, right? That they're projecting a lower number. They're being conservative. I think they almost always do this on the revenue side. It seems like they're very conservative on the revenue side. I don't always love what they're doing on the valuation side. We're going to get into that in a minute on this one. And again, I think they had I think 23,000 in income, from the boat and jet ski rentals that doesn't even show up in here. So yeah, I think I expect this one to do significantly. I think they're doing this because of, the way that everybody's expecting the travel market to be hurt a little bit. And so, there's no reason for them to go all out because, let's be honest, I'm perfectly happy with the 10.1% yield in the first year, and, their average yield. I always just hate the average yield number, but, perfectly happy with that. If we shut the refinance off, let's see how much that changes things. Okay. 13.9 IRR, 14.9 average yield. Let's turn it back on. And what did we get there? 15.34. So it doesn't even change it that much. And that's been pretty common, right? It makes a little bit of a difference, but not huge. And again, we're already seeing rates move downward. I think that, whether we get to 5% for a refinance or they refinance a little higher, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that sometime in the near future, they are going to be able to do that. All right. So the one thing I haven't talked about yet that, I like to mention a lot, and that most of the time, if I don't buy something on Mogul, it's because I think we're overpaying just from a pure asset standpoint. Not relative to the revenue, but just like, okay, that property, if we sold it to somebody who's using it as a home, I don't think that's something, valuing this in that manner is just, I mean, if you look at the comps they provided, you're talking about October 2022, September 2023, August 2024. You have to like really look, go further back in time or much further out distance wise, because there's just not a lot of comparable properties that are selling. One thing I wanted to mention, so I have mentioned in the past that they always have a appraisal contingency, and in this instance they're doing something different, and I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't mention it somewhere, because they do always say, yes, we always have an appraisal contingency. Well, in this case, if they're required to, if the appraisal is up to $50,000 off, we're still required to move forward, right? So we could appraise $50,000 low, and we'd just have to spend $50,000 extra. I understand why this is happening, right? Like, this is an asset that's just so hard to value. $50,000 is not a lot of money relative to the purchase price, right? If we're looking at $1.585 million, it's pretty easy for an appraisal to be off that amount, and so they're looking for some certainty that this is going to close. At the same time, because this is something that's different from what they're usually doing, I really would have liked to see them mention that somewhere, right? That no, this is one that even if we're a little bit off, we're going to close on. And again, $50,000 off, not some huge amount relative to this purchase price. But it seems to me that if they're going to do something outside of their normal processes, I'd love to see that mentioned somewhere in the listing. I didn't see it. Doesn't mean it's not there. Obviously, I'm not doing great today. And even on a regular day, I could have missed it, right? Yeah, year one income underwritten 40K below T12 actual. So that's interesting. So they're saying 280 something were the actuals. And I believe it because, AirDNA's info on this one is pretty junk. So, and then that doesn't even include the 23. So again, I'm just getting back to that because I noticed it there. So how worried am I about this valuation? Well, this is one that was really hard to find. So Zillow, I got a rental amount, and it's funny that it just keeps coming up as undisclosed address when I do find this listing. There is some sales history here. So it's sold for $1.35 million. I couldn't find this listing. If anybody finds this listing, if you could share it in the Discord, that'd be fantastic. Wait, what is this? This is not it, right? Oh, no, that's to report it. Yeah. So, so this is a little bit below where we're buying it now. Now, obviously, now we're getting it furnished. We're getting the jet ski and the boat. Does that make up the $235,000 difference? Probably not in, pure dollars, but like in the difference in startup costs and, having an ongoing business. I mean, that's been one of the things we've seen quite a bit that we end up spending. But also, too, remember, even though this is not necessarily, 2022 wasn't a peak for this area the way that it has been in a lot of other markets. So like a lot of places, like if you told me you paid something in 2022 here in San Antonio, this year I expect it to be very close to whatever you paid for it in 2022, because we had that little peak and then a dip and then starting to move again. We've seen a whole bunch of markets like that when we've looked at price trends, right? But that's not what this market's been like. And so paying something over this amount seems reasonable to me. They did list it for sale for $2.1 million in 2023, didn't sell it. And so one of the things, because that was a year later and they listed it for significantly more, it makes me wonder, was there a renovation? Which is why I'd really like to see what this listing looked like. So if anybody finds that, love to take a look at it. And then they dropped the price. They didn't sell it again, last year. And then now we have it under contract for significantly below what they were trying to sell it for here. Now, list prices are just that, right? It's what somebody is asking for the property. But they at least found an agent that thought that, that they could get that much money. And typically when you're listing an expensive property like this, it costs agents money to do it, right? So I often trust higher end list prices a little bit more than your cookie cutter ones, because to list these properties, you're typically spending a lot of money. Your virtual tour costs more. You're usually spending more on photos, and just in general, the average agents that are dealing with these properties tend to just have a slightly higher level of professionalism than the typical ones we run into, right? That's why they're able to list some of those more expensive homes. So it's not a guarantee. Sometimes you'll see really expensive homes listed at stupid prices, but often, I find them to be a bit more reliable than ones that are closer to, median price points. So all that being said, I don't really know how I feel about the 1.5. I was able to find a Redfin estimate for it. They actually they're the only site, I think. Well, some of the other sites had the real address. Most of them just came up with this rental listing, though, for whatever reason. Even though, and they'd say undisclosed, and it shows up as house for rent and for this much per month. So I don't really know if this is like another way that they're using to generate, the Airbnb revenue. Because, I don't think this is to long-term lease it. I guess it could be. You have a really good rent to price ratio though, right? If you ever actually rented it for $19,000 a month. You're crushing your 1% rule there. So anyway, I thought that's pretty interesting. But yeah, Redfin thinks it's 1.776. So that's really strong, right? And they acknowledge this, this purchase price. Now they have a much different square footage though. I don't know why. I did have, I had looked it up in the public records, and I don't have that tab open anymore. But yeah, obviously this number is way off from what we have. I don't know what they're throwing in there. That does make me worry a little bit about this. So what does Zillow have? Yeah, Zillow has the right number here. I wish they would give me the little estimate, but for whatever reason, sometimes you just can't get it on here. Because because there's an active rental listing. And I don't know, I kept trying to search for it and couldn't get it to come up. If there's, I'm sure some of you know how to use Zillow better than I do. I'm so spoiled that because in all the markets I invest in, I'm using the MLS regularly, right? So I don't have to, and it is weird because, and I think it's from one state to the next because of the way, the Zillow pulls info from, let me just make sure it's not on here. But it pulls it from the local MLSs. Oh, rent estimate. Okay, well, let's see if we can find the next one. Zestimates. Yep. Let's click on this and see if we can then paste the address in there. Oh, no. Okay. What if we do this? Nope. All right. I should have done this before. I don't know. I messed around with it quite a bit. Sometimes it's just I can't believe that it's not actually giving me one because I feel like that's what Zillow's for, right? Like how does it not give me that? Okay, let's try to do it here. Let's try to put that whole thing, this address one more time and see, because, right? Like how is this possible that it's not doing it? I don't know. Sorry to be wasting your time with this. I messed around with this quite a bit before. Yeah, see, I don't know. I don't know why it just keeps giving me the rental one, and I would like it to give me his estimate too, because obviously, even though this one looks really good, the square footage is way off. The range is even really good too. But again, when you have the wrong square footage, it doesn't make sense. And then the other thing too, like none of these automated platforms, I don't necessarily trust them for a property like this anyway, because there's not, it's so hard to compare these. Like, okay, if it finds another property like this, is the pool similar? Is the condition similar? Like it's not as if there are just a bunch of nearby homes that are similar that it's giving you the info from. I find, these big estate type properties, a lot of the platforms like Zillow and Redfin and Realtor and all those have a really hard time doing it. I couldn't pull this up on Realtor at all, and I think it has to do with something about this. I don't know why the address doesn't come up on these, but a whole bunch of the listings when I was searching came up with it. So if you guys found that and you have a Zestimate or you have a Realtor estimate, I'd be interested to see that. What it really comes down to is I don't, something like this, and it's always true that, a property is worth whatever a buyer will pay. But like this, the pool of buyers for a property like this is so much smaller than the typical properties that we're looking at that are single family homes, that are a little bit more, closer to the median price points, even if they're, above, they're not 6 times the median, right? So, I mean, we're going to have an appraisal. We might end up having to pay the $50,000 gap. You just have to decide, like, are you willing to do that? I mean, it's definitely, if you buy this property, it's a pure bet on the hospitality business. The fact that we're going to make money, using this as a hospitality asset, right? As an Airbnb, VRBO type, short-term rental. And then sometime in the future, be able to sell it to someone else who either it's going to be someone that's using it like that, or it's just going to be an extremely wealthy person that just wants to have it as a summer home, or maybe not summer home because it's got to be hot there, but as a vacation home that they use once in a while. And so whenever you have that, it's really, the comparable sales sort of breaks down trying to do this. So what am I saying? So I'm saying I don't really know about the value, right? I feel really good about their income, at least relative to the limited info that we have from AirDNA. It seems like they're shooting low. I don't know, the jet ski and pontoon boat rental, that additional income, obviously it's nice to have. Over time, those assets are depreciating. Are they really, it's a lot of revenue though for a year. So I'm assuming they're more than paying for themselves. And they did say net. So obviously there's some, expenses, maintenance and gas going into that. But when it comes time to replace those, like, I think it's the right thing for them to do to just not include that at all. It's nice to have some ancillary income. But it is, this core business is what I really care about. And it seems like they're shooting low, but we could be in for a long recession, right? And if we are, I'd expect to underperform, and maybe for several years, right? Now again, they are shooting lower than last year, and so maybe that's enough, and it's going to keep going. I don't know. It has made me hesitate on buying a lot of these short-term rentals. One like this, where there's not another exit strategy, is one of the most worrisome for me. At the same time, this is price. Something this pricey is something that a lot of the people that are going to spend $19,000 a month on a lake house, and in the equivalent $5,000 to rent it for a week, whatever it is, are not necessarily the people that are really hurt by a down economy, right? Like if the very wealthy people tends to still have money in a downturn. So I don't know. I feel better about this than like, the Airbnb that is a budget Airbnb that then, okay, the person, oh, well, I don't know, because the budget one people might move down to. Just really not sure, sorry. I think I've gotten to the point where I've said everything useful that I'm going to say today, and everything else is going to be an incredible waste of your time. I appreciate you watching to this point. Oh no, I do have one more thing that I want to say though. We have a long way to go, right? They've only raised $144,819. The total offering is $808,000. Don't be in a rush, right? There is time to figure out, is this really the right move for you? There's time to do your due diligence, like really understand, especially if you're going to put a lot of money into it or a lot for you, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you could try to figure out. You know, I'm just used AirDNA to try to get comps. You could try searching. You know, Airbnb has a lot of different ways that you can search for stuff. See if you can get this to come up in sort of more national or regional searches, right? That's one of the ways. You know, I think the Lux thing is probably really helpful. I don't know. I said I had never seen this, and then when I really started to think about it, I remember I think we had one property that fit in this when we were. At one point, my company, the company that I work for, PMI Birdie Properties, that's where my team is located. They're my broker, right? I don't know. I have a business relationship with them. It's a little convoluted, but anyway, at one point we had a a short-term rental management team that was part of the company. They're no longer with us, but I think that one of the ones that we had, but I think just one, had gotten this designation, and I don't really even remember. You know, so I don't know a lot about it. I think that you can limit your search to just properties like that. And so obviously I'd spend some time trying to figure out like how, is this getting enough exposure? Because obviously like there's not a whole bunch of people that are saying, I want to go to Lizella, Georgia, right? And spend $19,000 a month or $5,000 a week. So this is, my guess is this is drawing from a larger crowd. Drawing from a wider, people are looking for destination lake house stays. They did actually talk about too, that they have, what are they calling it? I'll just let you read it because I can't focus right now. I can't actually read. That's my main problem when I'm not doing well, as my vision gets bad. Anyway, I don't know that I don't talk about this a whole lot on here. I think I do a little bit because this is why I don't really get off the couch that much. I have a chronic disease, and so sometimes it affects my energy level and stuff more than others. And one of the things that also happens is my vision gets a little bit bad when I should have taken a nap already. And I didn't take a nap. Oh, I took one this afternoon, but it's a long time ago. I told you you weren't going to hear anything else useful from me. So anyway, just keep in mind, we have plenty of time to really, to dig into if this created more questions than answers. Obviously ask those questions. Mogul is really, they're really open to answering stuff. If you do ask questions and you get insightful answers, please share that in the Discord with us or in the description of this video. That's one of the things we're all trying to do is help each other out, make sure that we're doing good due diligence, sharing info when we can. You can also share it in the Mogul clubs, if you're a member of one of their clubs. If you're not a member of one of their clubs yet, I don't see any downside. In the description of this video, I have an invite link to this 400 club. That's the one I'm in. Feel free to use that. There, you get club rewards, and you can actually see, let me see. Let's say if I go and click on this, you probably always see, okay, I've got $24 to invest in real estate. This is just all club rewards from the last about a week, because about a week ago I bought stuff and everything, so I used all my rewards, and so this is about a week's worth of rewards. So they trickle in pretty well, and I don't have a huge portfolio on here. I have about $20,000 so far, spread across several different properties. I mention this all the time, but maybe not as much lately. I am still experimenting with this platform. As much as I like Mogul, I haven't committed a huge amount of my net worth to it. I haven't even been with them for a year yet as far as investing in properties, and so I'm still just taking a very measured approach. I think it's the right answer. Obviously, that's not how everybody does things. I've seen some of you guys YOLO insane amounts of money into platforms, only to then just, lose big portions of it and then move it to somewhere else. Hopefully, what we're all here for is to learn and get better and make sure that we're not doing stuff like that. That's it. Okay. It's enough for this evening. Until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to. If you're watching this Thursday night, Friday morning. We are doing a Fractional Friday live at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. So feel free to jump into that. Till next time, going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.